Hello and welcome back. I'm Dr. Mark D. Baldwin, and today's lecture is on the Federalist Papers. Written by Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay from 1787 to 1788, the Federalist Papers were 85 articles to explain the Constitution to the American people. To this day, they constitute the finest discussion of Republican principles of government ever written. After the Revolutionary War, the colonies drafted the Articles of Confederation, but they were inadequate, so the Constitution was hammered out and needed to be ratified by the new states. Understandably, there was quite a bit of skepticism and resistance to the new Constitution, especially in New York. So Hamilton, Madison, and Jay wrote the papers to instruct the people of New York and the other hesitant states on exactly what the new Constitution was all about and why they should ratify it. As they were then, our national political debates are very heated and contentious today. Issues such as privacy rights, the size and scope of federal versus state power, taxation, and special interest groups are hotly contested in Congress and among the voting citizens. Nowhere can we find more lucid, wise, and persuasive documents clearly detailing the Founding Fathers' original intent than in the Federalist Papers. Despite being called Federalist, the papers repeatedly stressed the crucial importance of the federal government being held in check and limited in its size and power. The individual states must remain sovereign, with the federal government unable to assume any power or authority not explicitly delegated to it by the Constitution. If that original intent were actually taken seriously, thousands of laws, departments, acts, and programs would have to be dismantled today, for they are clearly unconstitutional and grant to the federal government powers it never should have had. The first paper is an unparalleled discourse that begins by Alexander Hamilton informing his readers they are in a historically unique position to determine, quote, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice. If the people meet the challenge, their actions can change the world. Outlining the issues to be addressed in the following articles, he argues in favor of a united government. So let's turn to the first Federalist paper and read the first paragraph in the current Norton Anthology 6th edition, as I'm recording this PowerPoint. It's on page 739. For the future, you should have no problem looking up the page. This is number 1. Alexander Hamilton writes, after an unequivocal experience of the inefficacy of the subsisting federal government, you are called upon to deliberate on a new Constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks its own importance, comprehending in its consequences nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts of which it is composed, the fate of an empire, in many respects the most interesting in the world. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may with propriety be regarded as the era in which that decision is to be made, and a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind. So, you have a beautiful introduction, very clear, lucid, logical, setting the stage. Okay, let's look at the third paragraph here as Hamilton begins to discuss the various obstacles in the way of the ratification of the Constitution. Among the most formidable of the obstacles which the new Constitution will have to encounter may readily be distinguished the obvious interest of a certain class of men in every state to resist all changes which may hazard a diminution of the power, emolument, and consequence of the offices they hold under the state establishments. All right, so it's politicians who feel threatened. Their power is threatened. The second and third obstacles, ignorance and personal causes, he discusses in the fourth paragraph. So if you look at the beginning at the fourth line of the fourth paragraph, candor will oblige us to admit that even such men may be actuated by upright intentions, and it cannot be doubted that much of the opposition which has made its appearance, or may hereafter make its appearance, will spring from sources blameless at least, if not respectable, the honest errors of minds led astray by preconceived jealousies and fears. So numerous indeed, and so powerful are the causes which serve to give a false bias to judgment, that we upon many occasions see wise and good men on the wrong, as well as on the right side of questions of the first magnitude to society. So, your own ignorance, your own bias, your own inability to see the truth can lead you to not understanding the importance of this Constitution. The fourth and fifth obstacles, pride and mistrust. Continuing, the circumstance, if duly attended to, would furnish a lesson of moderation to those who are ever so much persuaded of their being right in any controversy. And a further reason for caution in this respect might be drawn from the reflection that we are not always sure that those who advocate the truth are influenced by purer principles than their antagonists. Ambition, avarice, personal animosity, party opposition, and many other motives, not more laudable than these, are apt to operate as well upon those who support as upon those who oppose the right side of a question. So your own pride, believing that you're right, and the mistrust of others are other obstacles to the ratification of the Constitution. And then in the fifth paragraph, he has a warning to watch out for the hot rhetoric that's going to be thrown around. And yet, however, just these sentiments will be allowed to be. We have already sufficient indications that it will happen in this, as in all former cases of great national discussion. A torrent of angry and malignant passions will be let loose. To judge from the conduct of the opposite parties, we shall be led to conclude that they will mutually hope to evince the justness of their opinions and to increase the number of their converts by the loudness of their declamations and by the bitterness of their invectives. So you see, look out for the loud, angry, bitter words flying back and forth. Let's turn to the 10th of the Federalist Papers, written by James Madison. Number 10 is perhaps the most famous of the Federalist Papers, for in it he warns against the divisive and destructive nature of factions, otherwise known now as special interest groups, that gather together to protect and promote their special economic interests and political opinions. Factions often harm the public interest and stomp on the rights of others, groups and individuals alike. Since they are natural to human inclinations, factions cannot be eliminated. They can only be controlled and regulated, which is one of government's main responsibilities. Okay, let's read from Federalist Paper number 10 by James Madison. Among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break and control the violence of faction. Skipping down several lines to about the 12th line. The valuable improvements made by the American Constitution on the popular models, both ancient and modern, cannot certainly be too much admired. And yes, a declaration of the excellence of the American Constitution. And then skipping down to the next paragraph. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or a minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or of interest, adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. There are two methods of curing the mischiefs of faction, the one by removing its causes, the other by controlling its effects. Let's skip to the 7th paragraph where Madison discusses politics, and he's got it down to a T. The latent causes of faction are thus sown in the nature of man, and we see them everywhere, brought into different degrees of activity according to the different circumstances of civil society. A zeal for different opinions concerning religion, concerning government, and many other points, as well as of speculation as of practice. An attachment to different leaders ambitiously contending for preeminence and power, or to persons of other descriptions, whose fortunes have been interesting to the human passions, have in turn divided mankind into parties, inflamed them with mutual animosity, and rendered them much more disposed to vex and oppress each other than to cooperate for their common good. So strong is this propensity of mankind to fall into mutual animosities that where no substantial occasion presents itself, the most frivolous and fanciful distinctions have been sufficient to kindle their unfriendly passions and excite their most violent conflicts. But a most common and durable source of factions has been the various and unequal distribution of property. Wow, he's got politics down, doesn't he? Skipping to the end, the last 3 lines of that paragraph. The regulation of these various and interfering interests forms the principal task of modern legislation, and involves the spirit of party and faction in the necessary and ordinary operations of government. Now let's read the 10th and 11th paragraph very quickly. How do you deal with factions? The inference to which we are brought is that the causes of faction cannot be removed, and that relief is only to be sought in the means of controlling its effects. If a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. All right, so the remainder of this essay discusses the differences between a democracy and a republic, and which one can deal with factions more efficiently and effectively. Well, thanks for your attention, and I'll see you next time.